Picture a crisp winter day on the outskirts of Paris, January 29th, 1985. Inside a private hospital in Neuilly-sur-Seine, an infant girl arrived in the world with a legacy already centuries in the making. She would bear the name Athina Helene Roussel, granddaughter of Greece's most iconic titan of commerce, Aristotle Onassis. Some said her lineage was weighed down by a fabled Onassis curse, because tragedy had hounded her family for decades. But in that instant, none of this was obvious. She was simply a baby, tiny and vulnerable, unaware of the destiny swirling around her. She was the daughter of Christina Onassis, once the world's richest woman, and Thierry Roussel, a scion of French pharmaceutical wealth. She was also the only surviving descendant of a shipping empire that had in some ways reshaped global maritime commerce. From the start, Athena's mother insisted on weaving Greek traditions into her child's life. So at only a few months old, the infant was baptized on Scorpios, the private island her grandfather Aristotle had once turned into a lavish retreat. The ceremony was pure spectacle, with Greek Orthodox chanting, a hush across the Ionian Sea, and distant glimpses of the mansion that once hosted Jackie Kennedy as Onassis's bride. Yet Athena herself, swaddled in a lacy gown, would later say she barely felt connected to these storied Greek ties. She was far too young to remember. Soon her mother's heartbreak overshadowed everything. Christina Onassis struggled with her health, battling depression, prescription pills, and a destructive cycle of crash diets. Athena's father, Thierry, was charming but mercurial, prone to forging new romances. And the Onassis circle, haunted by past losses, whispered that tragedy might not be finished with them. Then on November 19th, 1988, tragedy struck indeed. Christina Onassis, only 37, was found lifeless in a friend's Buenos Aires estate, apparently from a heart attack triggered by fluid in the lungs. Though friends knew how barbiturates and amphetamines had ravaged her system for years. Athena was just 3. She had no real memory of her mother, except fleeting glimpses on Scorpios, or maybe cuddles in a Swiss chalet. Now she was whisked away to Switzerland by her father, who took guardianship. A hush fell over the Onassis clan, mourning the last direct child of Aristotle. The funeral overshadowed Greek tabloids for days, the casket eventually resting on Scorpios beside Onassis himself and his son Alexander. And so Athena, the sole living link to that grand empire, found herself an orphan of sorts, albeit with a father. The next step was unstoppable. She would inherit an unimaginable fortune. In time, half the Onassis empire would be hers, but for the moment she was just a toddler in Swiss boarding schools, watched carefully by her father's partner, Marianne Gaby Landhage, who also helped raise Thierry's half-siblings. The media clamored for details, but Thierry built a fortress around his daughter, restricting interviews, controlling photographs, determined that the paparazzi not devour her childhood. He allowed minimal Greek influence in her life, some language lessons, but mostly she grew up in French, English, and Swedish. Even so, she carried a swirl of genealogical weight. It was rumored that at age 8 or 9, she had a trust fund worth billions. This child, who might have wanted just a normal father-daughter day at the park, was forced to see financial managers, lawyers, and trustees who supervised her mother's estate. The rumor goes that in her early teenage years, she signed documents disclaiming Greek nationality, bowing to her father's disdain for the Onassis brand. She said she felt aversion to anything Greek, fueling tabloid headlines about her betrayal of her heritage. But that story was complicated. She was, after all, a lonely teenager with no mother, overshadowed by a father who'd never quite admired the Onassis name the way the public did. In her teenage years, Athena discovered a passion that would shape her life: horses. Gabby apparently had a love of riding, and young Athina found solace in the stable. The hush of a barn, the steady breathing of a mare, the sense of freedom in the saddle, these replaced the suffocating walls of boardroom meetings about her trust funds. She started training in show jumping, traveling quietly to events in Europe, far from the paparazzi. By 16, she was already good enough to place second in a youth show jumping event in Jerez, Spain. She never bragged about her fortune, never flaunted the Onassis name, signing up simply as Athina Roussel, a teenager with big dreams. That display of humility endeared her to the equestrian community, but the press still saw her as Onassis's golden heiress, destined for controversy. At 18, in 2003, she came into her majority, thus controlling the staggering sum from her mother's estate. Estimates said it was about $800 million, which included a stake in shipping lines, real estate holdings, plus partial oversight of the Onassis Foundation. The other half of Aristotle's fortune funded the Alexander S. Onassis Foundation, named after the beloved son who died in a 1973 plane crash. People worldwide marveled. How would this newly adult heiress handle the weight of so much money? The tabloids guessed she'd become a flamboyant socialite, perhaps repeating her mother's meltdown. But Athina had other plans. She wanted to ride. She wanted to compete. She went by Athina Onassis in the equestrian circuit, quietly reconnecting with her Greek side by applying for a Greek passport that same year. Her father's pro-French stance be damned. It was a small personal rebellion, an identity statement. She might disclaim the Onassis curse Maum, but that name had power, and in subtle ways she recognized it. 2 years later, in 2005, she made a decision that ignited global headlines. She'd fallen in love with Álvaro Doda de Miranda Neto, a handsome Brazilian Olympian show jumper with big dark eyes and a quiet confidence. They shared a passion for horses, meeting at competitions. She was 20. He was older by a decade. With a child from a previous relationship, people whispered that Athina was repeating Christina's patterns, forging quick, intense relationships. But love is love, so on December 3rd, 2005, they married in a lavish ceremony in São Paulo. She wore a Valentino gown rumored to cost upwards of $100,000. The event spanned days, culminating in a reception with 1,000 bottles of Veuve Clicquot. The press salivated over every detail. The arrival of VIP guests, the wedding cake shaped like a horse stable, the father Thierry sitting at a back table. Afterwards, Doda and Athina moved to Belgium, where they established AD Sport Horses, a stable complex that quickly became a center of show jumping talent. They traveled to Florida's equestrian circuit in Wellington, Florida, each winter. In public, they looked like a fairy tale couple, the shy Greek-French heiress and the charismatic Brazilian rider. But behind closed doors, cracks formed. Doda was known as a ladies' man. Meanwhile, Athina had trust issues from childhood. They tried to build a shared enterprise, breeding top-tier jumpers, training for the Global Champions Tour, hosting the annual Athina Onassis International Horse Show. At times, the synergy worked, especially around 2010, when they had a strong stable of horses on the circuit. But rumors swirled that Doda was unfaithful. In 2015, those rumors flared. By 2016, her security team allegedly caught him in the act with another woman in Florida. A certain Nikki, rumored to be a Belgian escort, stepped forward with photos, emails, receipts, confiding to a friend of Athina's that this affair had lasted 8 years. The heartbreak was immeasurable. The paparazzi devoured every detail, from the meltdown in the Florida house to Doda's attempts to patch things up. Athina filed for divorce in 2016, lodging the case in Antwerp. She hired the same divorce lawyer who'd represented Michael Bloomberg and Donald Trump's ex-wives. Robert Stephen Cohen, a formidable figure who specialized in high-stakes splits. Doda demanded a monstrous monthly alimony, £350,000 some said, and partial ownership of their stable. He also asked for custody of the horses. The final settlement in 2017 hammered Doda's demands into a fraction of what he wanted. He left with significantly less, while Athina walked away battered but financially intact. She also left Florida, returning to Europe, her illusions shattered. The press called it the costliest divorce in show jumping. That's the biggest known scandal of her adult life, but not the only one. Tensions with her father had always lingered. As a child, she was forced to disclaim her Greek identity in Swiss court. Then in 2003, she changed her mind, reapplying for Greek citizenship just before her inheritance came due. This about-face stoked speculation that she wanted to seat herself on the Onassis Foundation board, but the foundation's trustees blocked her in 2006, arguing she lacked sufficient Greek language skills and knowledge of philanthropic management. She lost that legal battle, fueling her disenchantment with Greece. She sold Scorpios, that fabled island, to Russian heiress Ekaterina Rybolovleva in 2013 for around $150 million. The Greek press fumed. How dare she shed this national treasure? She retorted that Scorpios was more burden than idol. It had too many ghosts. She rarely visited anyway. Between the divorces and the property sales, her fortune shrank from rumored billions to maybe under $1 billion by 2020. Despite that loss, she remains astonishingly wealthy. She invests discreetly. Some say she poured millions into a French supermarket chain with a former Macron minister. She might hold real estate in Belgium, the Netherlands, or Switzerland. She's known to keep a low profile, no big charity galas, no flamboyant cameo in Mykonos clubs. Instead, she's found solace in continuing her show-jumping career. Through heartbreak, injuries, like that 2012 tumble that fractured vertebrae in her back, and family drama, she keeps returning to the stable. The consistency of equestrian life is her anchor. She's too aware of the tragedies that hammered the family. Aristotle's only son Alexander died at 24 in a plane crash. Her grandmother Tina Levanos ended her life in an overdose. Her mother Christina died at 37, fatherless, brotherless, battered by heartbreak. Even Aristotle Onassis, the unstoppable shipping magnate, succumbed to heartbreak and illness soon after losing Alexander. Almost every principal figure died too young or in bleak circumstances. People wonder if that hex might track Athina. She's had her share of gloom, from fractious family relationships to a humiliating divorce and ephemeral love. The Onassis curse remains a ghost that never fully recedes, but she's managed to skirt its worst edges. As for her father, Thierry Roussel, once rumored to have manipulated her childhood for control over the Onassis fortune, he remains a somewhat remote figure in her adult life. She respects him, but never forgot that he fathered other children during his marriage to Christina, effectively wounding her mother's heart. She also remembers how controlling he was with her trust. Some tales say he tried to shape her worldview to scorn Greece, ironically fueling her later desire to reclaim that heritage. And though their relationship is civil, she rarely speaks publicly about him. She once told a close confidant she doesn't blame him, but can't forget. One abiding question is, does she still love horses with the same intensity after the fiasco with Doda? Friends say yes, that the stable remains her safe haven. She rides daily, invests in new prospects, and competes occasionally under the name Athina Onassis for the Greek Equestrian Federation. She rarely places first at major events, but she's no slouch. In 2013, she performed decently at the European Championships, defying skeptics who said she'd lost her nerve after her serious back injury. She's occasionally rumored to date other riders, like the Italian show jumper Alberto Zorzi in 2022. Nothing is confirmed. She's fiercely private, ensuring tabloids glean only scraps. Her personal tragedies run deeper than just the divorce. The memory of her mother's death at 37 must weigh on her as she outlives that age. She sometimes visits her mother's grave on Skorpios, though maybe not since 2007, if Greek media are correct. The island sold to a Russian heiress is no longer her domain. She has no place for nostalgic illusions. She told a friend once that the tomb visits made her feel haunted by a heritage I never asked for. She's parted with that. If she wants, she can still sail by, but the estate and beaches no longer belong to the Onassis family. For a woman who lost so many family ties, maybe it's a relief to let them go. Possibly she's found closure in forging her own path. Athina remains somewhat of an enigma. She rarely grants interviews. The last paparazzi snapshot was in 2024 at a friend's wedding in Monaco, wearing a subdued gown, hair dyed a soft brown, a faint, polite smile. She avoids the flamboyant clubs that once defined her mother's life. No one sees her partying in Athens or riding on some yacht off Capri with a new beau. She invests quietly, rides her horses, and might or might not be romantically entangled with a show-jumping colleague. She remains the figure in the background, rumored to still carry considerable wealth, though less than before. If her mother was the ultimate poor little rich girl, perhaps Athina is the cautious, reclusive heiress, determined not to replicate Christina's heartbreak. Some people have scolded her for stepping away from the Onassis philanthropic legacy. She tried to join the Onassis Foundation's board in 2006, but was rebuffed. The foundation leaders insisted her Greek wasn't fluent enough, that she lacked the philanthropic experience. She could have waged a PR war, but she chose to walk away. She sold Skorpios soon after. That signaled a final break from the old Greek ties, it seemed. Even the Greek government, which once welcomed her to national events, found itself overshadowed by her desire for privacy. She never lit the Olympic torch or championed local charities, like some might have expected. The golden Greek heiress parted ways from a place that had once worshipped her lineage. She became simply Athina, a woman forging a new identity in equestrian circles, separated from the tragedies and illusions that destroyed her mother. It might sound a bit lonely, but maybe that's the path she's chosen to preserve her sanity. The Onassis name is like a magnet for drama and heartbreak. She's witnessed it enough. Now she invests in her stable. The rumor is that a few times a year she quietly sponsors small riding academies for underprivileged children in Brazil or in the Netherlands, but the details remain murky. She never publicizes it. She hates the press. The meltdown of her marriage taught her how tabloids can tear your dignity to shreds. She never forgot the day images of Doda's other woman circulated in Brazilian and European gossip magazines, or the mocking references to the billion-dollar divorce. If once she was naive about paparazzi, she's wise now. The Onassis curse hasn't undone her entirely, but it shaped her caution, forging a quiet existence free from spotlights. Possibly that's a victory, escaping the fate that befell her mother, grandmother, uncle, and grandfather. She might live to an old age in relative peace, surprising the doomsayers. Or maybe some new heartbreak will come along. The curse can't easily be measured. But as of now, she stands as a survivor, not flamboyantly bold, not giddily naive, just a grown woman determined to remain out of the tabloids' crosshairs, forging her own definition of freedom. The story of Athina Onassis is the story of how one tries to outlive a dynasty of sorrow, how one navigates inheritance measured in hundreds of millions, how one manages a name that once overshadowed entire industries. She's the living testament that you can be an heiress to near limitless wealth and still find yourself battered by heartbreak. She's also a testament that you can choose a new path, revolve your world around an honest passion like riding horses, and quietly step off the stage that devoured your ancestors. Her future remains unwritten. For now, she's content behind stable doors, meticulously training her horses, rarely glancing at the Greek tabloids or the swirling rumors. She's alive, pushing forward, presumably hoping not to become another tragic footnote in the Onassis lineage. And in that way, perhaps the Onassis curse meets its match in her determination to keep living, quietly, on her own terms.